This is Xane Anderson. Welcome to the Principal Podcast today. Today, I am honored to have with me Adam Bird, who's the founder. He's the CEO of Heroes Media Group. He's a seasoned serial entrepreneur, and he has a passion for serving what he calls the Heroes community. Heroes Media Group is a broadcasting platform that's dedicated to providing a voice for our community heroes and those who support them. And he's been... his career has been centered around serving America's community's heroes for more than a decade, including military, veterans, firefighters, first responders, law enforcement, educators, medical professionals, and clergy. Hey, thank you so much, Adam, for being on the show today.
Absolutely, brother. It's great to see you.
Glad to have you. Now, I got to tell you, I've talked to Adam and known Adam for a while here, and I'm grateful that he's on the show. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
So I started, I guess I cut my teeth in the media platform with terrestrial radio down in Scottsdale, Arizona around 2011 timeframe. And in 2012 at the time, we had started if not the first, one of the very first all veteran podcast networks. And had a business partner who ran that for several years, couple years. And then shut that down. And in 2015, I started what is now known as Heroes Media Group. And basically I was getting people coming to me, asking me to help them start a podcast. And so I did. And then I started editing stuff for people, and I got into the audio production side of things, and eventually that led to transcription, and it just kind of grew from there. We started the Heroes Media Group company with about 4 shows, and we're somewhere over 35, 40 shows on the network now. And then we have clients that we don't host, that we just like white label for and whatnot. And there's another half a dozen of those there. So that's kind of how it started. We're a full, like you said, digital media and publishing platform. A couple of years ago, we tipped our toes in the water with audio books and stuff as well. So we help authors do their audio books. So anything podcasting or anything that has to do with a podcast, we do. And anybody that wants an audio book, we can also produce that as well.
Wow. Awesome. Now, one of the things I really love that. So you've helped do, it sounds like dozens of,
I've been involved over the last decade. I've got over 20,000 episodes that I've been directly involved with.
Wow. Awesome. Well, one of the reasons I wanted you to bring this on the show, and I appreciate you sharing that, is you've been able to be successful in business, but you're also a dad. And of course, a lot of the people listening to our show today are parents wanting to hopefully learn a little bit about or get some relief, get some guidance, learn some principles, some techniques, something to be a better parent. Tell us a little bit about your parenting and what you've experienced. You're able to balance business and parenting. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my son was born in 2003, and 10 days later I was deployed. So I was in the military. I got a military background. I spent 9 years in the National Guard and did a deployment for the initial push in 2003 into Iraq. So he was 10 days old when I got deployed. So I missed the first 8 months. I didn't see him again until he was like 8 months old. And I made a kind of a promise to myself that I wasn't going to miss anything else at that point. It was going to be hard because I had my military career, or what I thought was going to be my career. And here I got this little thing that's just eating and pooping and crying. And it was the greatest thing in the world to me. I was fairly young still. I was 25. And I got back from my deployment and kind of went through a divorce. And about a year after that, I got sole custody. So my son was probably about 3-4 years old when I got sole custody of him. And the other party wasn't really involved much at all during his upbringing. And for me, it was something I knew I always wanted to be a dad. So, and having experienced what I just experienced overseas, it allowed me to not talk about, not think about, or really deal with any of my own insecurities or problems or demons or whatnot. I focused on my son. That was all I cared about. And literally, like, that's literally all I cared about. I didn't care if I lost my job. I didn't care if I lost a house, a car. I didn't care if I died. It was just, as long as my son's okay. That's all I care about. I focused so much those first several years on that. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the best thing to do either, but
isn't that amazing how being a dad, I got to tell you, changes your thoughts. I mean, it changes
oh
how
man,
you think about things. It goes from being I'm thinking about all about me to just like you. I've experienced that same thing where I'm like, oh man, I've got this child who depends on me.
when they're
I've got
when
to
they're
be a good example. I've got to help them. I got to, and
yeah,
all these things.
when they're that age, you'll walk into oncoming traffic, and you'll do anything, and you'll move mountains just to make your kid happy. um and that's how it started. And obviously, as they get older, um things change. You need to change as a parent. You need to adjust certain things, keep your um morals and your values and your foundation in place, but you got to be flexible, as well, I think. So, that was then. My son's a sophomore in college now. He's 20. And he called me this morning on his way to PT. He's on our ROTC program, and we have a great relationship. And he'll always be my son, but now that he's getting a little bit older, I've always said he's my right hand man all through life, and that hasn't changed.
That's great. Man, so how, I mean, you've already told us a little bit, but I'd like to even hear more. Like, what is it like having to be a single parent from a guy's point of view?
you you and I are godly men, right? And
Well, try to be.
yeah, and I think, there's a saying that God's got a sense of humor. And I always used to say, well, God's laughing hysterically right now because he made Adam a father, and he's like, here, have at it. And just, it was it was uh how do I say this? As a single dad with nobody around, like closest family, anybody was like 2.5, 3 hours away. And I didn't really have anybody else that I could rely on. I became dependent on my son as much as he was dependent on me. Now, I say that, folks, because I didn't come to that conclusion until much later in life, when he got older and started kind of doing his own thing. When I came to that realization, but looking back on it now, I relied on him. Like, I needed somebody to take care of, and I needed him around. When he wasn't there, I got antsy. I was frustrated and irritated. When he was home, it was, I was still working a corporate job. So it was like, you drop them off at morning daycare, or, before school starts, right? You go work your job, and then at 6 o'clock, you pick them up. And by the time you get home, they're doing homework, you're making dinner. You've had all of maybe 10 minutes with them by the time, make sure they're, showered and into bed. And I made an effort every night that when it was bedtime, I sat there for 15 minutes. I asked him about his day. I wanted to hear what he went through, what he liked, what he didn't like. Read me a book for 15 minutes, whatever it was. I did something solid with him for 15 minutes, and I made that habitual. And I think that was a big part of why we have such a close relationship now, because we would talk about anything. But it was difficult being a single parent, doing it on your own. It's not easy, and for a guy that had a hard time in school and learning and this and that, I always tried to do things that I wasn't good at, or didn't do to ensure him that, hey, you're going to be a better man than I was growing up.
Oh, I love that. How did you juggle your work responsibilities with being a dad? As a single dad?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the first couple of years, it was heartbreaking, honestly, because you have to go to work so you can keep a roof over your head and food in their mouth. But after, I would say, right around the junior high age, and in Arizona, it was like, sixth grade, I decided that I was going to leave my corporate job because he was getting into a lot more after school things. Like he was playing flag football, he was doing extracurricular stuff through the school, and I was missing out on it. And I always had that mentality where, like, I'm paying somebody else to basically raise my kid. And it made me very angry. I was like mad about it. So I was like, I don't care. I'm leaving my job. We'll figure it out.
So you had a good corporate job. You decided to switch so that you could have more time with your son.
Yeah, ultimately that was my mindset. Did it work out that way? No, it didn't. I tell you what, it did, but when you start your own business and stuff, a lot of the times you gotta sacrifice time and do that. But I made it work. And it was in other things, whether it was, hey, we're going to go to the park on Saturday and toss the football around, or we're gonna go see a movie, or we would eat out a lot because it was just kind of a thing where we could just kind of hang out, do something different. We weren't in the house. Right. We were doing something. It was little things like that, going for walks, playing games together and stuff like that. And again, it didn't take up a lot of time. And yeah, I
love that. I love that. I love that you here you were in a situation where you're a dad, you're working, and I think there's a lot of parents in that same situation. They're in this situation. Maybe they wish they were married or not, or whatever it is, but they find themselves in a situation where it's a little bit tough. It's maybe not ideal as they would like it, but you just still made it work. I mean, it wasn't like it was the end of the world. You're like, I'm still going to take him on walks. I'm going to go to his games. I'm going to ask him how he's doing for 15 minutes every night. And so I guess for some of the parents out there who are, they're saying, hey, well, I'm a dad. Can I really do this? Or I'm a single mom. Can I really? If you just keep going forward, you can make it work. And it sounds like you have a good relationship with your son.
Yeah. Here's the big thing. Kids don't care about, when they're growing up, they'll want stuff. I want a PlayStation. I want this. I want that. Pick something, whatever. But when it's all said and done, they don't care. They don't care about any of that stuff. They don't care if you live in a tent. They want their parents there. That's what's important. And I was fortunate enough to pick up on that, where it was just like, you know what, it doesn't matter where we are, what we're doing, what I'm doing or whatnot, as long as he's healthy and he's okay. That's all that matters. I'll fit everything else. Like I really took that leap of, you had to have faith. I prayed about it a lot, and it just, I didn't know. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know what I was going to do tomorrow. I didn't know what I was going to do next week. I didn't know. I just knew that this was something that I had to do. And I knew in my heart that everything was going to be all right. And I would figure it out as we went.
Man, I love that. I love that. That ability to just not know how it's going to work out, but just to keep going forward, having faith that it's going to work out. And, I think we talked about it. Just the fact that you showed up, fact that you were there. A lot of the, and I think you and I have chatted about this before. I was lucky enough to be on your podcast, which, by the way, is a phenomenal podcast for anybody listening. Tell us the name of your podcast.
It's called The Decision Hour.
The Decision Hour with Adam Bird. I was lucky enough to be on it. I remember we were talking a little bit about um, how a lot of the kids who are having problems, a lot of the kids who end up in prison, a lot of the kids who have real issues, they can trace it back to dad not being there.
Yeah.
And sometimes dads could make an excuse and say, well, had this bad situation and didn't work out, so I'm just going to run away. One of the things I admire about you, Adam, is that you didn't run away. You were there, and you made your son a priority. He maybe didn't have an ideal situation. Sure, you had to work, you had to support, you had to figure things out, and you had jobs and starting a business, all kinds of things. But your son knew you cared.
Yeah.
Your son knew it. And just having you, even if the situation wasn't perfect, is enough that your son's life, I'm sure, is thousands of times better because you cared enough to have him there. And I guess for any dads out there who are listening, if you think it doesn't matter, if you have the faith to go forward, kind of like what you were saying, Adam, there was, I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know if we're going to, maybe we do have to live in a trailer or a tent or something really, but my son needs me there. My daughter needs me there. My children need me there. And I love the example you've said of, hey, this is the kind of the cards I was dealt, but we made it work.
Yeah.
Such a great example.
Let me say this, especially and this kind of goes out to the moms. I'm not picking on you or anything like that, but if you're living in a split family, your kids want you around, and if they're important to you, you'll do whatever it takes. And I've heard every excuse in the book. Well, my ex-wife isn't doing this, or the kid's mother isn't letting me do this or that. So fix it. Fix it, because it's not about you and it's not about her. It's about the kid. And if you both care about your kids, then you guys will put your differences aside. You'll come together and focus on what's important, and that's the child. It doesn't matter about you, and it doesn't matter about the mother. It's you put your focus on the child. That's what's important. And listen, I made a lot of mistakes as a parent. And you're going to, if you're out there, maybe somebody that's listening to this is a newer parent or hasn't been a parent for very long, you're going to make mistakes.
But don't make the mistake of not being there.
Exactly.
Be there.
Exactly.
That'd be the biggest mistake. Like, you go in there knowing you're going to make mistakes, do your best, learn, right?
Yeah. If you here's another thing. I'm going to share this X real quick if I can. My son is getting ready to go to high school. Okay. This was several years ago. So my son's going, and he gets accepted into this private school that's 2.5 hours away. Great opportunity. I didn't want him going to any of the schools in the area that we were living in at the time. We had nice neighborhood and stuff. The schools sucked. All of them were horrible. And I could say that because I worked in that district as a substitute teacher for a few years. So he gets this opportunity, and it's down by where his grandparents live. I really had a come to Jesus meeting with myself, and I prayed about it. And then I sat down with my parents. I said, look, Junior's getting this opportunity. Would it be okay if he moved in? I had to go to my parents and ask them if my son could live there during the week, and I would come down on the weekends because I was, building the business and whatnot, and still had the house. And they're like, oh yeah, of course, grandparents, right? Hardest to date, that's been the hardest decision that I've ever had to make as a parent, was to let my son move in with my parents, because I felt like such a failure. And I felt like a failure for probably 2.5 years. It wasn't until midway through his sophomore year, he had just got his driver's license. I had to fly somewhere out east, and I was frustrated. And he pulls the car over, and I'm sitting there like, what are you doing? He's like, hey, I need you to just listen to me, Dad. He says, I need you to stop feeling bad. Stop feeling upset or like you failed. Or so. He's like, I love my life. He's like, I certainly wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the things that you've provided. He's like, and I'm with my grandparents, who I don't get to spend that much time with anyway. Now I get to see them on a daily basis. He's like, how many people get that opportunity? He's like, stop. He's like, focus on what you need to do, because I'm still going to need money for college and all these other things. So it was at that point where I realized that it was okay. And that as a parent, as a father, our job is to give our kids, or we want our kids to have better than what we had growing up. Provide for them and give them the opportunity, at least give them the opportunities that we didn't have. And I say this with no arrogance or anything like that, but if I've done anything right in my life, if now's my time to go, I can honestly say that I did. If I got anything right, I can say that I got my son right.
I love when you say that. And somebody wise said, no success can compensate for failure in the home. And I love that saying. And I like what you've said here too. I think sometimes, as I heard you talk, you said, you mentioned you were praying and you had your son, and then that business. This idea of priorities being going to put my faith in God first, and my family right next to it, and then my finances. And I think a lot of times in life, at least in our culture, we have it backwards. We're like, well, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to work as hard as I can, and then maybe I'll squeeze in a little bit of time for my family, and I might say a prayer or two if I have time after that, and forgot.
Go to church once a year or something like
that. And if you could flip it and say, wait. If I have my faith in God first, my family is going to fall into line, and it doesn't mean you have to be perfect and everything has to be right. But I think for those, for any dads out there who are wondering, you're thinking, I don't know what to do. Here's a guy, Adam, who, you were changing diapers when he was 8 months old, it sounded like. Is that right? You're back and you've got this. Did I hear you correctly on that?
Yeah. When I got back, I had to learn everything kind of, on the fly. There's a lot of parenting books out there, and a lot of them are written by people that have never had kids. So there's here's the thing. You have a child that you're just like, he keeps crying, I don't know what to do. Well, call somebody that has had kids and ask them for advice and see what you do, and just kind of go from there. And it's trial and error, but stick with it, because let me tell you something, man. The greatest gift in life is being a dad. But don't make no mistakes. You will never have a harder job ever in your life than being a dad. It's the greatest, but it's also the hardest.
Yeah.
And it's
those things go together.
And it's the most rewarding.
Yeah. Well, you're an inspiration to me. And I've been in a similar spot where I was a single dad, and so grateful I made the choice to stay involved. Wouldn't trade it. No. But the fact, you're being a single dad and taking it on, saying, hey, we're going to do it. For any listeners out there who are single dads, I love what you said, Adam, about how it's the greatest thing you could do. It's hard, not going to lie, but worth it. And don't worry about being perfect. Do your best, learn, look at people who've got good, children. Look at success stories that you think you'd like to learn from them. I like that. So
let me, if I can, real quick, when you,
sure.
As kids get older, and this is something I've had to learn recently here in the last 2 years, after they graduate high school and they go on to whatever it is that your kids decide to do. Mine got a scholarship to go to college, and you have to, don't be afraid to let your kids fall. Let them fall. Be their cheerleader. Be there on the sideline to kind of pick them up. But there's been a change, and even my family. I'm very protective of my son, even in and around my family, as weird as that may sound. But even my family had said something. My dad said something. He was like, I've seen a change in you, even when it comes to my son, Chris. And he's like, you seem more relaxed. And I was like, because I at a point where I'm not leading and having him try to follow me to go the right path. Now he's choosing his own path. I'm just kind of on the sideline cheering him on. And if
Right.
if something happens, you let them fall, but you're there to help them get back up, and then you're encouraging them to move forward, maybe take a different path or whatever the case is. So as parents, don't coddle or baby your kids. Let them fall, let them learn, because that's how they learn. You cannot let them be afraid to fail. Let them fail. Let them accept it. Let them use that as a motivation to move forward in life, because that's how you learn.
Yeah, I love that.
And that the same goes. That's the same that goes for you, the parent.
Yeah, I like what you said there. I heard somebody say, and when you were talking, that kids they become just about as, I don't know if I should use the word tough, but they become just about as tough as their dads are. Do you know what I'm saying? And when you said something about this, let me give you an example. If a kid falls down and skins his knee and the parent runs up, the kid will learn to react like you as a parent reacts. So if a dad runs up and go, or a parent runs up, any parent just runs up and goes, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe you skinned your knee, and let's get a coochie coo," and everything. The unsaid message is, you're kind of weak and you're fragile and you better not fall and scram your knee. But as of a dad, if you say, you know what, looks like you skinned your knee. I've had that happen to me too. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Get up and shake this off. And it sends this message. So when he's alone without you and he skins his knee or any other number situation, your voice is almost in his head saying, my dad said I'd be okay, so I know I'll be okay. Rather than, my dad freaked out, and so like I must be this, or my mom freaked out. And I think just those little things that you're talking about, like, just saying, let them, it's better to let them fail when they're young so they can learn the lesson than have to go 20 years later and fail really big. I mean, when you got them when they're 5 or 6 or 7 and they make a failure, you can talk about it, and then they don't have a big failure later on, right? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah. It's different. There's different phases in life where that's going to happen, and each one's going to be different, and you just address it when those times come. But the big thing is be in your kid's life, lay that solid foundation, and let them know that you're there. Here's the other tip too, and this is I think one of the biggest things that parents have a problem with is listening. We tell our kids, "Hey, listen to me. I'm telling you something." Blah blah blah. Well, that works both ways, believe it or not. Because when you listen to what's going on with your kid, one, you're establishing more of that trust with them. They trust you, and so when something big does happen, they're not afraid to come tell you about it. And so I think that's big, and I'm definitely speaking from experience on that one, because I was more of the do this, and then finally it just something uploaded, and he was just like, oh man, I need to listen to more of what he's saying so I can have a better understanding of how to address certain things and you work together with it. So anyway,
I love that too. And here you're a vet, you're a tough military guy, you're an entrepreneur, successful. You've helped lots of podcasts, have your own awesome podcast, and you're telling us to just stop and listen carefully. I love that. From a parent's perspective, I've fallen into this trap myself where I'm like, okay, this is what we need to do. And you start getting kind of military-like, kind of command-like. And you're saying maybe we just need to go have that 15 minutes, like you were saying, when they come home, right?
Just take a step back. Or if you're planning something, let's say you're planning a trip, right? Ask them to, like, what are your thoughts on this? How do you think we should? I used to ask him, like, how do you think we should pack the truck or the car? And I made a game out of it, like it's like a Tetris or Jenga or whatever. The game was popular at that time, and it'd just be like, hey, help me figure out how to put this. He's like, Dad, put the bag in the truck. I was like, we got to make sure we got to fit all this stuff in. Help me figure out how to do this. And he's like, and then he'll sit there and explain how to, and that's just developing trust, and it makes them feel like their opinion matters, or you're getting them involved. And that I think that just it brings more togetherness and a closeness and whatnot. And again, everything, like, these are just things that I did that worked for me, but nothing will work if you're not there. So you gotta show up, and you gotta be there.
I love that. Show up and be there, even if it's just you.
Yeah.
Which you're a good example of that. No one else to help you. Raise your son from a young baby all the way to being an awesome man, learning from you. Well, for any single dads out there, man, or anybody who wants to reach out to you for your expertise on. Now, one of the things I forgot to mention, you're an entrepreneur here. Tell us a little bit more. I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot of that, and you mentioned some of it at the beginning. Anything else you want to mention with that? For those, obviously, dads, part of our, at least I feel part of my responsibility is to provide and take care of my family. And I think that's where men need to be. Tell us a bit about your entrepreneurial experience. And
I am what's the saying? A serial entrepreneur, I think, is the phrase that's being toted around now. So I got Heroes Media Group, and then in 2020, I didn't think I was busy enough, and that's sarcasm. I started a beverage company called HMG Beverage, kept it the Heroes theme. So we have a coffee line and we have a spirit line there as well. HMGbeverage.com if you'd love to check that out. And about 2 years ago, a buddy of mine approached me and says, "Hey man, I'm starting this suit company where we're going to suit transitioning veterans with a custom made to measure suit worth about $1,500 off there." And he's like, "I need you to come in and kind of guide me and help me. I want you to be a part of this." I was like, "Oh yeah, like suits and sports jackets. I mean, I need a new wardrobe, so yeah, I'm all for it." And that was the birth of a company called JB Auto Clothiers. We started that, and that's going strong. And then we just started a nonprofit 501c3 in October of 2022. And the proceeds that we get from our beverage sales and part of our podcast sales goes to that. And then every 90 days, we write a check to help another nonprofit that services community heroes, or maybe if there's a hero out there in need, we try to help them out with whether it's services or whatever we can really provide at that case. So yeah, I'm not slowing down anytime soon. There's a couple other things that we're getting our hands into here over the next 6 months. So there's probably a couple more HMG businesses that will be launching here in the next 2 years. I'm sure. I just got to stay busy. It's my thing, I guess. I don't know.
Staying busy and still being a good dad at the same time. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I understand people can reach out to you if they need to at heroesmediagroup.com. Is that right?
Go to heroesmediagroup.com. You can email me, Adam, at heroesmediagrp. Or I'll even give you my personal one. It's Mr. Adam Bird at gmail.com. It's BIRD.
Awesome. If there's anything else you would like to leave our listeners with, I mean, if you could say one thing that would help dads, would help guys maybe find themselves in a similar situation where if they find themselves a single dad and they're wondering what to do.
The biggest thing is don't give up. Don't give up if you're going through the, sometimes if you're single dad or recently single dad and you're going through the court process, don't give up. It's a pain in the butt, but it's worth it in the end. Remember, it's not about you. It's about your kids or your kids. And then the other thing that I'll say to everybody is, in the world that we live in today, be the light in somebody's darkness. Smile a lot, make somebody laugh, and know someone cares.
Yeah, I love that. Adam, such an honor to have you on the show. Thanks for being with us today.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yeah. We'll reach out to Adam if you have any questions, and be sure to listen to the Decision Hour podcast with Adam as well. Thanks again, Adam.
Yep. Take care.
I am so jealous of my wife because she gets the ultimate career. She gets to train and nurture and love our children more than I get to because I have to be doing things like this podcast. Parenting's the ultimate career. If you like what you heard today, please like, subscribe, comment, leave a review. Thank you for listening. You can also check out my book, What I Want My Children to Know Before I Die. It's available on Amazon and other bookstores. Thanks again for listening.